I loved the original Resident Evil 2 when it came out in 1998. I remember my friend telling me about it in school, and then I went and rented it from a small local rental store in my town. I had never even played the first one. I had never even heard about it. Aside from Splatterhouse, I don't think I had ever even seen a horror game before. And although both Splatterhouse and Resident Evil are intensely gory games, they are on entirely different levels from each other in the horror department. So I didn't know what to expect, and I was too scared to play it. Seriously, the zombies on the street in the very beginning of the game scared me, and I didn't really know what to do. I wasted all of my ammo right there and died pretty quickly. But eventually I got over my fear and played further into the game and figured out how it worked, and it wasn't too long before I fell in love with it. After that, I was hooked, and I had to play every game in the series. Even the not-so-good ones, like Resident Evil Survivor, and Resident Evil Gaiden, and Resident Evil 5, and 6. But Resident Evil 2 has always been my favorite in the series. So when they announced it with that weird E3 We Do It announcement, which was the most lackluster game announcement I had ever seen, because they showed literally nothing. But despite seeing nothing, I was still damn excited for it, because the remake of the original was great, and that had been out for a really long time. Like, a long time. So it was about time they remade the second one, and wow, did they do it. Let's start with the graphics. Resident Evil 2 looks beautiful, and it is running on the RE engine, which was the same engine used on Resident Evil 7. The big thing about the engine was that it allowed for realistic damage to body parts, allowing to shoot off parts of flesh and such, which made for a pretty disgusting view in RE7, and now again in the new RE2. You can shoot off the zombies' limbs, arms and legs can be dismembered, and there was a time when I was playing that I blasted a licker with a flame round from the grenade launcher, and it actually looked like burned and charred flesh. It was super gross, but awesome. There are no more fixed camera angles like in the original, which may be a problem for some, but it allows for a new view of every area in the police station, and I mean every area. The entire police station is accessible throughout the game by one character or another, and there are no more loading screens between rooms. You can go from the sewers beneath the city on up to the top of the clock tower of the police station without having a single loading screen in between. And every inch of the game is amazing looking, with every gory detail. The sound of the game is also great. I love the music, and you can buy and download the original RE2 soundtrack and have that in the game instead, which some people are a little angry with, which I can understand, yeah. But if you want to spend a few extra bucks, I think it's worth it for the nostalgia alone. The voice acting in Resident Evil games has never been, good.
What is this?
Wow, what a mansion!
Sir!
Let me take care of this. What is it?
However, in this remake, the voice acting is great and very realistic. Well, mostly. There were a few lines from Leon that sounded a little hokey, but other than that, the voice acting was perfect. Also, the sound effects of rainwater blowing in from a broken window, or the screeching snarl of a hungry zombie in the hallway nearby, the sound design in the game is amazing. Now, onto the gameplay. The gameplay is great. Aiming your weapon feels natural, and there is assisted aiming on the assisted or easy difficulty, if you would like that. And you have to be good at aiming, because zombies don't go down as easy as they did in the original. In the original, you could pop a few bullets in a zombie, and they would go down, and a pool of blood would come out of them to show that they were indeed dead. For reals this time. But in the new RE2, you can unload an entire clip into a zombie's melon, and it will fall down and look like it is dead. But then it will spring to life and bite your ankles like an angry chihuahua. Skulls are thick, and small arms wouldn't always do the trick. Huh, I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Zombies you think are dead could come back and eat you, unless of course they're melon pops like it's a Gallagher show. No getting up from that. There are 3 different difficulties to start. Assisted, where there is aim assist, allowing for lock-on to vital areas. along with the ability to recover a certain amount of health over time, and enemies are a little weaker. There are autosaves, and typewriters do not use ink ribbons to save. This is the easy setting. Standard, which has enemies that are a little harder to kill, health can only be recovered using items, and there are still autosaves and typewriters without ink ribbons. This is the normal difficulty. Hardcore. This difficulty brings even tougher enemies, has no autosaves, and brings ink ribbons back into the fold. You now need ink ribbons to save the game. Everything is in very limited quantity, and you will need to conserve everything you have, just like classic survival horror. The map this time around is even more useful than before, because now items that you found but did not pick up will be marked on your map, and rooms that still have items in them will appear shaded red, while rooms that have no items left to collect will turn blue. Locked doors will also appear on the map with icons of whatever key is needed to unlock them. A couple things I didn't like about the game had to do with the inventory system. In the original games, when you no longer had use of a key, the game gave you a prompt to discard it. The remake does not do that. Instead, you must enter your inventory and select the item, which you will now be able to discard the item manually. The other problem I have is that the weapons must be reloaded during gameplay by pressing a button to reload. You can no longer reload your weapon by combining ammo with your gun. You must reload in-game, which can become a huge problem with some weapons that have slower reload speeds, which adds a whole nother level of difficulty to the game, but is also a bit annoying. Neither of these things are a big deal, but I figured they were worth mentioning. The story. The story of Resident Evil 2 is amazing. There are 2 separate campaigns that you can play through, either as Claire or Leon, and once you complete the game with one of them, you can unlock a new game's second run, which allows you to play through the other character's campaign and see what happened on their side of the story. Both characters have similar A campaigns, but the B campaign is different and unlocks the true ending to the game. However, no matter what campaign you play, either A or B, there's still a lot of overlap, but there's still enough new things between each side that make it worth playing more than once. Each character also has their own section of the game where they play as a different character. Leon plays as Ada, and Claire plays as Sherry, just like in the original game. But this time around, there's an entirely new location for Sherry to explore, which is really cool. But it felt different from the rest of the game, because it turned into a little stealth game. I mean, Metal Gear is my favorite series, but I didn't expect to be playing it in the middle of Resident Evil. The original section felt a lot scarier with a bigger chance at death. But don't get me wrong, I still appreciate what the remake did with the story, and it adds some interesting and messed up elements to the story. I just think it felt different from the rest of the game and had to be mentioned. The core story of Resident Evil 2 remains pretty much the same as the original. It just adds so much more depth and intrigue to everything within it. Characters that we just spent mere moments with in the original now have motivation and lives of their own. They feel real instead of just being cannon fodder for the undead horde. Some of these characters are getting DLC of their own later this month. Side characters that in the original were just there to be food or decoration now have backstories and character development. I hoped that the Resident Evil 2 remake would be good. I feared that they would royally screw it up. But I had no idea that Capcom would release a remake that would possibly surpass the original. This game is honestly that good, and it is one of the best games in the entirety of the Resident Evil series. I highly recommend you pick it up. If I had to give it a score, I'd say 9.5 screeching undead out of 10.